So good morning, everyone. I'm Gigi Neal with OSU Extension here in Claremont County, which actually I'm coming to you via Denton, Texas this morning from the University of North Texas with my son. He's out here looking at a grad school. And so with us this morning, we do have Scott Beuerlein from the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, and he is going to talk about some bad trees. He's going to talk about some bad trees for planting in our area of the state or in just bad areas, period. Doesn't matter whether it's our corner of the Southwest area, but hopefully it can help us out with some of our tree concerns we've had over the past several years with some of these wonderful insects that we've had flying through, or even areas that we can help better our hillsides or landscape areas that are causing problems like this sidewalk he has in front of us. So Scott, take it away.
Thank you very much. I was told that this is a more refined audience than usual for horticultural events, and so I better tone down my title, which I did using the dollar signs here, but then I started thinking about it, I got nervous, and I thought I better tone it down a little bit more. So we're going to call these the baddest. I'm a product of the 70s. Remember when everything that was good was bad? We're going to go with that interpretation. So the baddest trees for difficult places. So these are the best trees for sites where you have poor soil, poor drainage, this, that, the other thing, concrete, girders, ingots, whatever can get in your soil and make it worse, syringes, whatever. So we'll start with some difficult places and maybe not the best decisions. Maybe we don't plant our trees under underpasses. I don't know. And when we do, maybe we don't choose a calorie pair. Just a thought, just throwing that out there for people to think about. Maybe we shouldn't plant sugar maples under wires, knowing that they become large trees and will require basically this kind of pruning to keep our power going during storms. I guess pruning like this on the left is sort of an aesthetic decision. If you like that look, go for it. But it's not always best for the health of the trees. And then when we have a neighborhood homeowner association that we absolutely require that we plant nothing but the invasive calorie pair, that we not also make it a rule that you have to go in and topple them so that they look like this. So this isn't benefiting anyone. This is a nice neighborhood, really made ugly because of some decisions that weren't maybe the best. Let's just say it that way. On the left here is a community, an upscale community that decided to save their ash trees. That's fantastic. And then they paid somebody to volcano mulch them for them. That's not fantastic. That's kind of a bad decision. And, there are a lot of people out there, let's just say, who claim to be professionals who really aren't. So we always need to be on the lookout for idotrees.com and their ilk, I think. But we can do more. Trees definitely need to be more a part of our neighborhoods and our communities. When you think about it, we are almost at the epicenter of the great eastern moderate temperature zone forest that would have extended from well up into Nova Scotia down to Florida to western Minnesota and beyond, and certainly down into Texas. That is one of the great forests of the world. We don't often think of it that way because we've fragmented it a lot. We really developed this part of the world, our country, the eastern half of our country. But we still are in that forest. This is what this land, this climate wants to do. So Trees are the first choice you should make when you're deciding a landscape, and make the most important choice. Certainly, making good decisions about which trees to use are vital. We're going to start with some notoriously bad trees, really the baddest of them all. One of those would be the hackberry. Sure, it's not a tree that most of us think about going to the nursery and coming home with. Most nurseries don't even carry it. But let's think about it in a new light. Um, Among trees, it truly is a swan. As a young tree, it's not the best, but as an older tree, it is very beautiful. When it gets to be, a big beauty, and all those pocked and nippled leaves are way up where you can't really see them. Now we're starting to talk about a great tree. We're not getting any awards for fall colors, so here we have Coleruteria, we have a sumac, ginkgo, maple, dogwood, serviceberry, I think, or tupelo, red maple, and now we have the hackberry. So we're not going to win any awards for color there, but there are a lot of other good things about it. First, it is one of the top trees for pollinators. It hosts a lot of Lepidoptera and other species. Um, and then by selection, by choosing the best of the baddest, we can come up with some really good trees. So here is a selection made in the Chicago area called Windy City. Chicago has tougher conditions than we have, and they are working with a lot of these trees that we haven't really looked at that much yet. So here's one with good foliage, good form. Another one called Prairie Pride. Again, these photos are taken at the Chicago Botanical Gardens, and show the possibilities of hackberry. And again, maybe it's not one you put in your front garden, but maybe it's one that is, if it's growing in your back alley, you let it go because it will produce shade. It is extremely tough. It will not suffer from any true issues of life, issues of pests or disease. And it does support our pollinators really well. Of course, pollinators are vitally important for our ecosystem. Another one very similar in all the attributes of a hackberry is Catalpa. It's pretty common around. You can see this growing. I once joked that you'll find this growing out of an old toilet in the rubble of a burned down crack house. It's not out of the question. It can grow virtually anywhere. Urban conditions, gravel, wherever, see this thriving. Such a condition is seen here, a vacant lot right up against the building in some rundown part of the city. Unfazed, it just grows and does well.
Hey, Scott,
yeah.
can you scoot your microphone closer to you?
Actually, I think so. Let's see, try it here. Okay, and I can try to boost the volume again. I didn't go all the way up with it. Still kind of quiet.
Well, they're saying they just can't understand you and hear you clearly.
Oh, weird. Okay, that's never been an issue before.
Oh.
Has it gotten any better?
That sounds better.
Okay, I'll try just my own volume up.
There you go.
And we'll see how we do. So, yeah, this tree develops a lot of character even at a fairly early age. It can look like it's been there for a long time. It does have beautiful flowers, big flowers that are really nice. A lot of times they're way up in the canopy, but still can be enjoyed. The fall color is kind of a weak green, a weak yellow. And yeah, this is at the zoo in fall color. It's a little bit later than or earlier than some of the other things. Kind of is a nice, easy introduction into the fall foliage season. So a good tree, something that you should consider for those really tough locations. Here is a really tough tree that isn't commonly used. It's the hardy rubber tree, Euconia ulmoides. What's interesting here is you can take these leaves and pull them apart and see the latex strings that give it its common name, the rubber tree. Um, I have seen this planted to replace dead trees in the worst of our droughts. I think it was 2007. The city had planted some red maples. Those all died due to the drought. They followed in the middle of the drought with a hardy rubber tree, and those didn't miss a beat. They just went right on through the summer and are looking good today. They're really tough tree. Kentucky coffee. You might not be aware of how tough this tree is. It is a beast. First of all, it's a very beautiful tree, particularly in the summer when the foliage is out and it's extremely lacy and beautiful. But otherwise, fairly coarse. In the winter, it's a fairly coarse tree. The bark is coarse. Um, there's the winter look up at Dawes Arboretum. There's the summer look at Dawes Arboretum. So kind of a contrast in seasons. But a beautiful tree in the springtime when the leaves are emerging, the flowers are pretty, and then it's, I think, the doubly pinnate leaves. So it divides once and then divides again and gives you this really nice look. Good fall color. That's the flower there. And here it is in Tusculum in a health strip, maybe 18 inches wide, maybe 2 feet at best, on a slope in the city. You know they're not getting watered, they're not getting fertilized, they're not even getting mulched, and they are thriving. So good indicator that this is a tree that you can put in tough places. Same with Osage Orange. Um, a distinctive tree. It develops a lot of character later on. A little unwieldy in its youth, but through pruning it can be to look better. Problem, of course, are the large fruits. Now this is at Eden Park in Cincinnati. It was planted often in groups like this, in hedges like this, as a cheap fence to keep cattle or other livestock in. Can be a little on the thorny side, but as it gets older, it becomes distinctive and beautiful. This is one at the Art Museum near Eden Park with a lot of character to it. You know how many generations of kids have climbed all over this thing. But if you don't want fruit, which you would not want in a parking lot such as this, you might want to choose White Shield, which is a fruitless cultivar. So that would be the choice here. But on the other hand, if you do want fruit and you want large fruit, maybe over the driveway of your neighbor who you do not like, you might go with Cannonball, which has fruits that are maybe twice, maybe more the size of the Osage Orange fruit. And down in horse country, down in Lexington, there's actually an alley of Osage Orange, and it certainly is a beautiful thing to drive through. So some of these trees that we don't normally consider using definitely have their place. We all know black locust is tough, but we probably don't want to use it in cultivated landscapes. But there are a couple of forms that are hybrids that are globose, like globosa, or have purple blooms like purple robe that you might want to go ahead and use. And being a pea family, legume family plant, pretty tough too. Sophora japonica, the Japanese collar tree, another one that you could use in very difficult sites, usually downtown type situations. Here it is in Manhattan. You can see the root zone that it has there, nil. Yet it's a good 40-foot street tree, so something to consider. They can be a bit messy. They produce a lot of fruit, which is sticky. You can see it here in the distance and then up close. It's actually very attractive fruit. But when these pods hit the sidewalk or your car, they are gummy and sticky. So that's a consideration too. Actually, here it is in Baltimore at Edgar Allan Poe's grave site, which is one of the creepiest places I've been. I don't recommend it, even though the Sephoras there look like they might be kind of nice. There is a weeping form, pendula, which is pretty cool. It doesn't seem to get very large very fast, at least. Very beautiful, very nice. Got the flowers down where you can see them. So that might be one to use even as a specimen in a tough location. Here at the zoo, a lot of times, we have some very difficult places to plant down here in this urban environment. Sometimes we're planting where there used to be a parking lot. So one of the go-to trees for those really, really tough spots is the Lacebark Elm, Ulmus parviflora. You can get an idea of why it's so tough here with these roots that are exposed very close to the surface. Very many of them, very, very tough. It's actually a very beautiful tree. I love the bark. The foliage is fine and nice. It's easy to rake up for. So the bark has a lot of character and a lot of color to it. So we like it a lot here. It can get a little seedy, something to consider. This is the largest one I've ever seen. This is in Oakley. So how many years this has been there, I have no idea. It's pretty safe to say it doesn't get a lot of care, and yet it has thrived here for a long time. This is a photo of the leaves, which are pretty small. London plane, classic old school tough urban tree, named London plane because it could be grown in London during the thick of the Industrial Revolution. You see it in Paris, any major city in Europe, it's there. And we can use it too. It makes a great street tree. It's a hybrid between our sycamore, a sycamore that's native to Turkey, and it just turns out to be a tough, good tree. There's new varieties out there, Liberty, Exclamation, Columbia, which are tend to be more on the anthracnose tolerant side of things. But you'll see this tree doing rather well in all kinds of tough urban conditions. And here it is at Central Park. Can be very beautiful. This is at Gramercy Park in New York. Big, gives good shade. We like a variety called Sutneri, which is a type with a very white bark, almost whiter than even sycamore. So very striking in the garden, and people really do love it, including tree geeks who perform weird ceremonies around it. Let's just say that. Not go into it any further than we have to. Zelkova serrata, a Japanese Zelkova, another good tough tree, one that we use commonly here at the zoo because we know in a thankless, terrible site, we can put it in there and it will survive. It's used all over the world in tough locations. Those were in New York City. In its age, when you see really old ones, it is really beautiful. And the bark gets to a stage where it flakes like this. It's extraordinary. Very distinctive shape. Very easy to use in street situations because of that base shape. Beautiful, clean foliage, and even decent fall color. So a good choice for a lot of things. If you like variegation, the variety Goshiki is a good grower around here. I've seen it do rather well. And it's one of the few big trees with variegation that I think look actually kind of cool with it. So you might ask, okay, so I want to plant a tree. My conditions aren't the worst, but why not go with the baddest of the bad? Why not put in some of these trees and just be done with it and know that they're going to survive the haul and not fuss around with maybe some other trees? The reason for that is because we want diversity in our landscapes, especially with trees. We know that we have seen mass wipeouts of ash and other species in the past 100 years because of various pests and diseases. So one of our best defenses against that is to plant a diversity of plants in the landscape. So if something comes along, we don't lose all of our trees, or by having a diversity, maybe something doesn't come along as easily as it might otherwise. So the general rule is the 30-20-10 rule. You don't want more than 30% of a particular plant family, say the rose family, in your landscape. You don't want 20% of more than 20% of a single genus, like Acer maple, and then certainly no more than 10% of a specific species, like maybe sugar maple. So we want to get diverse with our plants, and when you have a good site, don't waste it on one of the toughest trees. Put something else in there and enjoy that. So, here's a good indicator of why diversity is important. This is a beautiful neighborhood in Livonia, Michigan. Unfortunately, these are all ash trees. 3 years later, those were all gone, and they had to start over. So let's talk about some of these other trees that are very tough, but aren't the toughest of the tough that you might work in the landscapes and increase some of the diversity. So here we see a red maple in a tough location. Red maples don't do especially well in these type of sites. We often see this tree replaced at Beachmont Mall. You'll see these trees replaced every 7 to 15 years tops. Maybe we should not do red maples here, maybe do one of the tougher trees. But there are some really good maples that we can use that are tough, that could grow there. One of those would be trident maple, Acer burgerianum. Very tough tree. It's a smaller grower, can be a little wider, so maybe not suitable for all parking lot situations. But a very beautiful, tough growing maple. I love the foliage. The bark is very beautiful too. Like I said, it's tough and develops a lot of character early in age. The leaves are a little bit on the variable side. These are all Acer burgerianum leaves. So they take on different forms, making identification tough sometimes, but a great tree. We all know, or hopefully know, about the lacebark maple, or paperbark maple, pardon me. It itself is a tough grower, but it's a slow grower. And I've seen a street in Cincinnati where we use it, and the neighborhood got fed up with it not growing, and they actually removed them, which is a shame because if given time, those would be some of the most extraordinary trees you'd ever want to see. But a good compromise is the gingerbread or the Gerard maple. This is a hybrid between the paperbark maple and species, and it grows faster, more vigorous, has better fall color, more consistency. So, and it doesn't have bad bark either. It's a little bit different from the true paperbark, but a good one. And here's a tree that was planted in the 30s, so that gives you some idea of the growth rate. The leaves are part of the tri-leaf group of maples, so you might not immediately recognize it as a maple, but really, this is the bark on the hybrid on trees that are about 30 years old or 60 years old. So it does develop some real character over time, and an easy grower. And that's the fall color. One that has hit the market recently, maybe in the last 10 years, is the Miyabe maple, Acer Miyabe, a variety called State Street. This is about the only one I know you can buy easily on the market, but it is a good one. I've seen it used as street trees all over the place. It does rather well. It gets very large, and it puts on about 3, maybe 4 feet of growth a year. So it's a fast grower. Big, beautiful leaves, kind of rugose, a lot of character to the trunk. So State Street is more of an upright form. A lot of the seedlings you'll see in Arboretum are broader. So maybe that's why this is the one we see on the marketplace so much more. A slightly out of focus picture of the flowers, and the fall color comes very late. Very late. It's one of the last things to go in the fall color, but it's a nice lemon yellow. One other smaller maple is the Tatar maple, hot wings. It's a lot like Japanese maple, but a really tough one. The feature here that's so nice is the red color for the samaras, for the seeds. That can be spectacular for a fairly long period of time in the summer. Here it is at the Chicago Botanic. I'm sorry, here is Acer truncatum, or the purple blow maple at Acer or at Chicago Botanic. another really tough tree. At the zoo here, we have used this in beds that are extremely tough. You know, they're in there duking it out in shade with bamboo and all kinds of competition, and they just hang right in there and do well. Nice distinctive bark. Okay fall color. It's not bad. I think it varies from uh, plant to plant, but good. For evergreens, this is a really tough one and a really beautiful one, and one that you see in old arboretums and botanical gardens and nowhere else. I do happen to know Ann in nursery has some, but this is the old rigid juniper, Juniperus rigida. Um, it is very graceful, beautiful weeping form. The needles are wicked sharp. So it is a deterrent to deer and other things, but a beautiful, beautiful plant that I just don't understand why it's not on the market more. You can grow this in a gravel pit and it would do fine. Just don't give it too much water. It likes to be dry and tough. Um, Other junipers would be the Eastern Red Cedar. It grows all along our freeways. This is our only actual native evergreen tree for this region. We kind of take it for granted because of that, I think, in the commonality of it and the fact that it does grow along the freeways. However, there are some really nice selections out there that are becoming more increasingly available. Art is a really good one. Glauca has more of a blue foliage. Gray owl is a shrub. Taylor has a nice form. So uh, you can be on the lookout for these when you need some screening, when you need something evergreen. Certainly don't disregard the fruits. They're very beautiful. Favorite of the waxwing, cedar waxwing. Oh, look, we've got a nice uh, bagworm there. It does host those sometimes, but it seems to be able to take it without much difficulty. This is the fruit set on Canart. Uh, Very heavy fruiter. Um, and then you can see it's almost become blue, almost frosted by the large amount of fruits on it. This is glauca with that blue foliage. Um, Pretty striking landscape, especially if you limit up just a little bit. And there's gray owl, which is the shrubby form with the blue foliage. There's the foliage up close along with some of the fruit. Um, Four season plant. I know we don't um, hold junipers in the highest regard, but I think we should kind of reimagine that and decide that, yeah, we grew up with junipers. They were common as dirt, but they're also very good at what they do. And Maybe we need to rethink how we approach those. Uh, some of the pines can be really tough too. This is another oldie but goodie. You don't often see it in nurseries, but you do see it in all the older gardens and arboreta. But the umbrella pine or the Taniotia pine has this beautiful red color to the bark. Very nice needles. Um, Very striking in the landscape. When this can catch some late or early light, it is a real specimen plant in the landscape. And then we have the lacebark pine, which is also common in older gardens and super beautiful. It's a slow grower. Maybe that's why it's not used as much as it should be, but exceptionally striking in the landscape and easy to grow in anything except wet soil. So the bark varies quite a bit. It can be green, it can be red, it can be white, gray, mixes of all the above, and super beautiful. There's the new growth happening, and maybe some young cones. Um, it's interesting. It's one of the rare three needle pines. So very, very cool. And the last of our evergreens would be a broadleaf evergreen, and most people probably don't think of southern magnolia as tough. It's extremely tough. We grow it here at the zoo in a lot of screening situations where it's battling it out with bamboo or in really deep shade, dry shade, and it just keeps on rolling. It just does what it does. Dee Blanchard is probably the best one that's used. Maybe you might go with Bracken's Brown Beacon because hardiness is the issue with that for us. It is good for us here if you choose the right selection. So I would go with one of these two, Edie Blanchard or Bracken's Brown Beauty, or Bracken's Brown Beacon, one of the two. These can be grown here without worry about them dying back in winter, and they are tough in whatever location you would put them in. And it's certainly a very beautiful tree. The evergreen foliage is beautiful, and the large flowers are wonderful and fragrant. So something you might want to use. You might not want to plant it this close to your house. It over time can eat houses or even SUVs or minivans. And if you wander too close to it, even a human being, could get lost there forever if you walk too close in the springtime when it's putting on the road. That's the indundenatum on the bottom of the leaf of Bracken's Brown Beauty. I've even seen this used as street trees in Cincinnati. They've had to limit up, but it's kind of working. Now let's go to some of the more beautiful of the baddest plants that maybe used in more specimen situations. Smaller plants that you might use in your yard in places where you don't have room for a big tree. So first of these would be the hornbeam. Particularly, our native hornbeam is really nice, but it is what it is. It's going to be that form, that look. It doesn't vary very much from that. However, the European hornbeam, it comes in all shapes and sizes. So we've got columnaris, fastigiata, various types of narrow and upright, and even weeping and things. So I like to think of these as the mini-me of the beach world. They look and act a lot like beech, but they're much smaller, yet they take on that character of a beech, fairly quickly. So here's an old one at the Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, just stunningly cool. Here's a regular European hornbeam grown in the open with its normal form. And here's one at the zoo. Look, you can kind of make out the cool roots in the ground and the lovely pleated foliage in the springtime. I love the leaves on hornbeams, but and then the fruits and so forth. But here, if you need a narrow tree, here's either fastigiata or Franz Fontaine down at the Taft Museum in Cincinnati. Here is Franz Fontaine at Churchill Downs in Louisville. And here's glebosa at probably Lexington Cemetery. So lots of shapes and sizes. Weeping at Spring Grove Cemetery. A lot of fun to use. You can even shape it. If you don't like the shapes they come in, you can shape it to whatever form you want. If you want to commit yourself to that much work over years, you can even make a tunnel out of one or out of several if you want. It's a lot of work, and you may ask yourself why, but it was a cool effect. It was pretty cool to see this. Our native red bud use in really tough sites, but Don Egoff, the type of the Chinese red bud, is really, really tough for dry, hot locations. It has more of a vase shape. It is very floriferous and a favorite of pollinators. It's actually sterile. So a lot of the Chinese red buds are have their look diminished by loads and loads of pods on them all summer long. Don Egoff just does not do that, so it stays attractive in the summer. The cornelian cherry is an early bloomer, great for those early pollinators. If you're a bee hive person, this would be a good choice, but it's also a very tough dogwood, so really good tree. It's fun to see that bloom early on. The foliage is usually nice and clean all season, and you do get these lovely fruits, which you can leave for the birds, or you can also make jams and jellies out of. And another tough dogwood is Venus. This is one of the hybrids between the Coosa dogwood and the Cordus natalii, which is a species native to the Pacific Northwest. Huge flowers, blooms later. It's blooming when the leaves are on the tree. But the flowers can get up to 6 inches across. and very, very abundant with the blooms. So it's a lovely tree. Mine, this is mine actually, was oversprayed by my neighbor's lawn service, so it got a good dose of 2,4-D. It developed a bunch of weird wounds, but its calcium is over, and it blooms like that every year and puts on new growth. So I'm kind of hopeful that it might get through it. But here you can see the leaves or the flowers up close, and it is a stunner. I'll tell you, the fall color isn't bad either. Those are the buds. So even in winter, it's kind of cool. And then Perodia. This is a choice tree with great bark, great fall color, good form. You not think that it'd be tough, but it is. It's from Persia, from the Iran area, Uzbekistan, Turkey. So it has to be a tough customer to live there where it's dry and where they have that maritime climate, cold winters. So here it is up at Morton or Longwood. Beautiful tree. The flowers come really early. It's in the witch hazel family. And they're not much to look at, but they're kind of an oddity and kind of cool if you catch them up there. The leaves are beautiful. Fall color, very nice on most specimens. It can be variable. If fall color is essential to you, you might want to buy it when it's in fall color. Here it is in a church in Indian Hill. Beautiful form, as you can see here, and leaves. And look at that bark. It really is distinctive, especially as it gets older. And quite a statement in the landscape. Ginkgo, boy, oh boy, talk about bad and tough. This is a real survivor. We'll talk about that a little bit more. One of my trees. It's been on the planet for about 270 million years. To put that in perspective, here, I lost my one slide. So mankind would have been just this little corner here. This is how long we've been on the planet. And this isn't the scale, but the dinosaurs were on the planet from the Permian through the Paleocene eras. Ginkgo predates even the dinosaurs. So they've been on the planet for a very long time and have dealt with all kinds of things. Some other genera that have been around for a while too, you can see are the pines and the bald cypress and the dawn redwood. So here's some perspective. So the ginkgos have been on the planet 270 million years ago. At the end of the Permian, we had the Permian Triassic extinction. This might be the one that you know where the comet came and hit the Yucatan Peninsula and wiped out life on Earth. 90 to 96% of all species were lost in that event, not the ginkgo. Then along comes another extinction event at the end of the Triassic, leading into the Jurassic, where 70 to 75% of all species on Earth were lost, not the ginkgo. And then there was the most recent extinction period at the end of the Cretaceous period, another 76% of all species lost again, not the ginkgo. Tough as nails. A survivor. If it can survive all that, maybe it can survive your yard. So think about all it's dealt with. It survived continental drifting, meteor strikes, climate change, dinosaurs. I'm sure, deer are a problem for us. Maybe dinosaurs could be even worse. Think of all the countless insects and diseases that come and gone. And then, the pressure that human beings have put on the species. In fact, it's almost extinct in the wild. It's only really on because it's been used in horticulture so much. Oh, and it survived a nuclear bomb. Yes, it survived a nuclear bomb. Less than a mile away from the Hiroshima blast, there was a ginkgo growing at a Buddhist temple. There you can see it in the lower right, still growing today. So it was burnt, it lost all its leaves, it was burnt back to just some branches, and yet it survived and on today, to today. And of course, I think we're all in agreement that's the baddest, right? So yeah, you can use it along railroad tracks and industrial parts of the city and not worry about it too much. You can use it as a street tree and not worry about it. You can even use it in a monoculture. 160 some odd ginkgos in this landscape at Children's Hospital in Cincinnati. Normally, of course, we all tout diversity. We all talk about the tools of monoculture, but if you're going to plant a monoculture, you could do a lot worse than use ginkgos, which have been on the planet for over 270 million years and been through 3 extinction events. They do get very old and large and beautiful. There are trees in Asia that are thousands of years old, but even 150-year-old trees are impressive. This is at Spring Grove. I think this was at the Morris Arboretum in Philadelphia. This is in your part of the world, in Claremont County, I believe. This is outside New Richmond. I forget the town, but
that is in Ripley on US
Ripley.
52 at the intersection of 62 and 62, 68, and 52. That's
Yeah,
my hometown. I know exactly where that tree is.
and I almost wrecked my car right there because as I drove past it, I noticed it for the first time, and hit the brakes and had to come back around and get the picture. So yeah, that is a beautiful tree. Who knows how long that has been there? This is at Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville. Just one of the cool things about ginkgos is they drop their leaves all at once. I mean, almost literally overnight, and they create these carpets of beautiful gold that are just mesmerizing. They're really cool to be a part of. And they again, tree geeks. It has a weird effect on tree geeks. So uh, it kind of becomes a mystical experience. Problem, of course, with ginkgos is they're women. They have fruit. There you got male and female ginkgos, and you really want to choose a male because the female produce large amounts of this apricot-shaped sized fruit, and it does smell bad. I have a female in my yard, and for the period of time when the fruit is falling, and there it is piled up against the rock wall, the whole neighborhood stinks, like sort of dog vomit, maybe. I don't know. Fortunately, my neighbors no idea where it's coming from, so I just kind of quietly rake them up and haul them off. But it's something that you really want in your yard if you can help it, and you can help it because most of the name selections of ginkgo are males. Don redwood, a cool tree, also nearly extinct in the wild, but found and saved by horticulture and now used in gardens and landscapes all over the place. Very distinct, very much like a bald cypress in shape, size, form, all of it. It's also a deciduous conifer, so it drops its needles in the winter and sprouts new ones in the spring. This is at Swarthmore College in uh, uh, outside Philadelphia in Swarthmore, Scott Arboretum. Beautiful in this use, lovely, really cool. Bark, the trunks. Um, this is the original planting of trees that were brought back from China after World War II at the U.S. National Arboretum. Very cool to see. This is the new foliage emerging in the spring. It's extremely beautiful, really fresh and beautiful, and then the fall color can be stunning. So really a great tree. You've got the normal green varieties here, and then you've got Ogon, which is the yellow leaf form, sometimes called gold rush. So that might be something you want to consider too if you want that striking yellow color. And then let's not forget about bald cypress. It's native to these sites, mostly in the south, up into Illinois and Indiana. Um, but you can grow it anywhere, any kind of normal garden soil or even difficult garden soil. And it does quite well. Here it is at Spring Grove. Again, it's a deciduous conifer, so the fall color beginning to happen, and then the leafless winter form. Does grow these needs when you're in a high water table or near water. No one knows exactly why, but they're kind of cool. Um, really nice. And I love the fluting that happens with some of the trunks and things that you see around. Also can be used as a street tree as it is here in Cincinnati. Maybe not best to grow where you've got wires. Just, you're going to have to deal with that forever. So as we finish up here, I just want to offer some new ideas. Maybe, some of the things we've done and failed with and failed with and failed with, we give up and we try some new things. Parking lot plantings are always one of the worst. Maybe we do less of these narrow, impossible spots where people have to walk through them, and more of these larger spaces where plants actually have a chance to succeed. You know, maybe we don't put, you know, these parking lot islands where trucks are inevitably going to drag their trailers through and create this mess. Maybe we move them out to the corners and increase the space. We took the same amount of space that we use for this, for a dozen of them throughout the parking lot, put them in one corner, we would have much greater success. Um, you know, sumacs are a species that I would love to see used in parking lots. They're suckering shrubs. They're certainly beautiful, and some of the best fall color. And here it is growing in, you know, an industrial wasteland in Cincinnati. But here it is at the High Line in New York City as part of a very unique and beautiful landscape used by a designer with some vision. So with an idea, a new idea for this plant. Just spectacular. And maybe, you know, if you put them in this kind of location here and a truck drives through it, they're just going to sucker back up and grow. And they don't need much. They're going to live for much longer than 7 to 15 years. So, and we also think about things like grasses in these sites. You get a fair amount of biomass, and they're better adapted to this kind of location than many of the trees we continually use here. This is at the Kenwood Town Plaza or Kenwood Mall. I forget what they call it now, but in Kenwood there. Bamboo, you know, certainly not a plant we want to use in our yards and gardens for the most part. It is a rambunctious spreader. You really do need to contain, but here it is contained by a row. It makes a great ground cover in this situation, creates a lot of biomass and habitat too. So it's an idea. And, you know, baddest trees for pollinators, why not? Oaks are, we know from Talamy, are one of the best supporters of Lepidoptera and also extremely tough trees. This is a large bur oak in Illinois. Um, that was the coldest day I've ever been outside in my life. It's probably minus 20 and bitter. But what an uplifting experience it was to come upon this tree and hang out with it for a while, even though we were, of course, trespassing and all the rest. But and oaks can be pretty tough. They have the reputation to be growers. That's not deserved. They do grow a foot or two every year. That adds up fast. They're beautiful in their small parts, the new foliage opening. And here's some swamp whites in Marymount as a street tree. What a statement this is. What, you know, a setting these trees create. And then some of the swamp whites, the bicolors. And here they're used in New York at the 9/11 memorial. Like something like 400 trees, you know, in a true monoculture, which again, you wouldn't want to do most times, but these trees are well cared for and they're swamp whites. They're going to be very, very tough. And then some of the hybrids with the swamp white are narrow and easily used in tight spaces and also can make quite a statement. Tree lilacs, pretty tough trees, good ones for pollinators for sure. And we've always relied on the Japanese tree lilac, reticulata, and it's certainly a good choice, very common now. But some of the Pekinensis are starting to show up in markets, and they're really good too. So China Snow or Great Wall are nice choices. And they have this lovely, really nice cherry-like bark, which it just adds another feature. So some of the best tough trees for pollinators are these. Certainly we should always be thinking about including more and better plants for pollinators. So I think, did I get under the wire? I did get under the wire. That's the end of my program. I'd like to thank you. I hope you heard it okay. Something's going on with the computer here that I don't quite know, but I'll be more than happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, Scott, I do have one question in the chat, and if anybody else has a question, please add it there, or you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask. The one question is, are all juniper berries edible? I only knew juniper berries in a liquid form.
Right, yeah, I know. Actually, you know, I saw a recipe not long ago that called for some kind of dish that called for juniper berries. And of course, we know it's famous for gin, flavoring gin. I believe that the berry we use comes from Juniperus chinensis. Don't quote me on that. And I've wondered the same question myself, and I've looked for answers and I haven't found it. So I unfortunately have to bail on that question, because if I got it wrong, it could kill somebody, and I'm not interested in doing that, not today at least.
Okay, we've got a question in the chat, and then Diane, I do see your hand is raised, so we'll come to you next. The question in the chat is recommendations for shade evergreen.
Well, that if you've got the room for it, that the southern magnolia can deal with a lot of shade. Shade evergreen in the conifer area, that's tough, man. Everybody wants that, and it's just not usually an option. Some of the arborvitaes can take a little shade, the western types, the green giants and so forth. They can do better in shade than a lot of the others. Some of the chamiciferous you might experiment with a little bit. I've seen them do okay. I mean, what happens is if the shade is too much, they tend to thin out, and you can, more often than not, are losing the feature you were hoping for. You might do better with some of the broadleafs, honestly. And you guys in Claremont County, I believe most of you have a more acidic soil and could possibly get away with some of the rhodie or azaleas, maybe even mountain laurels. I kind of hesitate there because that's a tough one. The evergreen, what is it called? The Prunus lorocoraceus. What's the common name for that? It's a shrub cherry with evergreen leaves. You'll get some winter burn some years, but other years it stays quite good. And then also some of the evergreen viburnums will do great in tough shade locations.
Okay, Diane's question is, what are the oak trees you recommend for wildlife and birds?
I think they're almost all equally good. If you really want to feed birds, go with the smaller acorns. I think that birds can actually eat. Like the smaller ones would be chinkapin or pin oak, and to some degree maybe shumard. I know jays can eat rather large acorns, but beyond that, I think the acorns wind up going to mammals when they get real big. But they all are really good, do a good job of supporting Lepidoptera, and most are pretty good acorn producers, in that last year at least. They tend to go every other year or every few years with a big production of acorns. Of course, those are banner years for wildlife.
Okay, are there any additional questions? If not, sorry, have no idea. Oh, I just replaced a blue spruce which died from needle drop with a magnolia. Do I need to do any soil treatments?
Well, thinking about it, magnolias is probably is another genus I could have thrown in with the tops, at least certain ones. They are pretty tough plants. They're really interesting when you start digging in. The roots are very distinctive and fragrant, actually. You've got the magnolia roots when you dig into them. I find magnolias to be pretty reliable plants. Unless the site is just the worst, it will probably do well there. The soil, it's hard to know. If a blue spruce was growing there and doing okay until the needle drop disease came along, I would think that your magnolia would do fine too. The key would just be to water it for the first several years at least in times of real drought.
Okay. And we do have one more question. Are these trees readily available locally? But we are talking locally. We got people on here from all across the state.
Okay. Most of them are. I think I kind of mentioned the ones that are more difficult, in that you're seeing it on the market or it's not on the market, but it should be. Um, there are certain nurseries like Klein Nursery up in Lake County, Ohio, that has a really wide assortment of trees, and they would have most of these things. Other nurseries you might you call and see what they have. Um, I think if you talk to nurseries or garden centers in the late summer or fall about trees that you would like to get, they could put those on orders that they're bringing in. Um, but most of these are going to be available. Like I said, there are a few that are going to be tougher to find, but those are the ones I probably mentioned, but they'd be a little harder to look for.
Okay, it looks like we've came to the end of our questions. And I know some of you had difficulty getting on at the beginning. I'm not for sure what the problem was, but hopefully if you missed a portion of it, you'll be able to watch the recording here later on once I get it posted. Otherwise, next week, we do have Amy Stone with us, and she's going to be talking about the spotted lanternfly and then give us a brief update on the cicada brood 10 that is coming here now. So we look forward to seeing you next week, and thank you, Scott.
I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too.